Good evening. You're listening live to the Xtreme Movie Show. I'm your host, Rob. I'm broadcasting to you from just west of Orlando, Florida, and from the Pinos Palace. I have from the Great Midwest. RDV and I also have from Central Florida as well, the young Generation Z guy, Professor Pixel as well. And tonight we're covering, of course, the second in Hammer horror films, Frankenstein series, and that would be Revenge of Frankenstein. And gentlemen, I got to say, another perfect example of Hammer horror capitalizing on what makes their films great, and that's usually solid production values, lush color, beautiful set pieces, tight budgets, and just damn good acting. Because I got to tell you, as much as I like Frankenstein and enjoyed this one here, while it's not particularly terrifying, I love the fact that we have, how would one put it in today's zombie-infested television space here when we talk about The Walking Dead? We have Carl, not Igor. So as it might be heard to all you younger people from AMC, it would be Carl, because Carl is the Igor, and Igor actually takes front and center here. But I gotta say, RDV, I kind of popped a few times for some set pieces in here and for some scenes that come up. We'll jump into that in a moment. But you're not the biggest horror fan here on the Xtreme Movie Show, and so it's interesting to listen to what you have to say about some of these films. And while we just did a quick review offline recently, Professor Pixel and I have Rosemary's Baby, is one of the greatest of all time. I'm curious as to what you think about your initial take.
I'm not one for the gore and the slashing and all this stuff. To me, it's over the top. It's like, okay, and after a while, they become, a lot of the slasher movies become the same thing. Deranged killer, girls show the topless. It's like, okay, we'll just cut out all the gore and just show me the topless girls. Whatever. But overall, though, I like these because these are more suspense, mystery, and overall, it just shows you, you do stupid things, it's going to come back to bite you in the butt. And this guy, Victor Frankenstein, hasn't learned his mistakes. He thinks he's smarter than everybody else, and and I love,
and he is.
so I love this. Columbia Pictures it was a distributor of these films, but this is like a sequel, and it takes literally not even I guess a couple of months or or after.
It's like 3 months.
Yeah, I love it. So overall, I just gotta say I love Coral. Coral is pretty cool.
Coral.
And I love the fact that they changed it. They took they could have normally just did like, hey, this is Igor. Yes, master. Right away, master.
That's right.
They could have done that, but instead,
I see it working.
I just love it. I love the fact that they decided to change it up and actually make him a more essential figure. Instead of just being like, I'm just the guy who grabs the bodies and helps the master. And
Agreed. He's to me the surprise of the film. Pixel, your initial take on this? I believe this is a first watch for you as well.
Indeed, but I just have to say, I'm not Prof. Pixel. Look at my mustache. See? Totally different.
Prof. Stein.
There we go. I have to agree with Verity Princess. I hate commercials too. That is the worst part of this movie. And I'm going to actually kind of disagree with Vickman. It's not Frankenstein's fault in this case. I think that all of it actually falls onto his assistant because Carl, the tragic figure, just wants a normal body. He wants to be seen as normal. So whenever he learns that, you're going to be this has succeeded, you're going to be seen by scientists all over the world, his stupid assistant just made Carl realize, I gotta get out of here, and totally messed up this marvel. But this movie is fantastic. I like it better than Curse of Frankenstein.
I did say a while ago that some people consider some of the later films and some of these entries to be a bit more engaging than the original film that sets everything off, and this is definitely one of those series. I don't know if that's true or not, but it's interesting to hear you say that.
Yeah, because this movie, while the monster isn't as monstrous throughout it, when he does have a touch of the brain madness, you can see it coming, and you can see the elements. It is body horror because it's him changing himself completely and his mind rejecting that. The elements of this film are fantastic. Peter Cushing is wonderful, and to see him trying to get away from the Frankenstein of before, it's wonderful. I loved it.
Now, the real issue for this movie is not necessarily Carl becoming the monster towards the end and how it affects things. It really is it's a tragic story in a way, because you look at Frankenstein and he's a genius doctor. Has he learned lessons from his last one? He's continuing down that same path. So, you know, I personally, I love some of the taboo things there. It kind of pops me with like all the grave robbing, and there's a really cool scene in here where he explains some nerdy thing to his assistant, who's basically blackmailing him. So I'm like, okay, how's he going to fuck him later on this? Because this guy's young and naive, he's going to get it. I just thought he was another handsome upgrade, but maybe not as morally centered as the guy from the last film. And when they're doing the eyeball test with the flame thing, I thought that's so fucking cheesy, but I loved it. And of course, really the story is Carl wants the bone, the really hot assistant who kind of forces her way into the job anyway. And Pixel, she's the very first Bond lady, if you did not know.
Yeah,
she's the
I
one that
forgot.
She's the one, yeah, Sylvia Trench. It's like, my name's Trench, Sylvia Trench, and your name is, and he goes, Bond, James Bond. And she was the one, I think he was making out with at the beginning of the second movie, From Russia with Love. And of course, next week you and I will be doing Moonraker here on our monthly Bond reviews. But that being said, RDV, before this movie, Professor Pixel on the first watch night just briefly touched on a movie called Rosemary's Baby. And it's a Roman Polanski film, which to me means it's automatically watchable, but it modernized horror. And when I look at what Hammer films are doing, I know you're not a big gore and blood and guts kind of guy. That's one of these things about these Hammer films so far that we've covered here on the Xtreme Movie Show that you and I have done. And you and I have done a lot of the werewolf films and some other crap. But they're just really well acted, don't you think?
Yes, especially here.
Is your name RDV? No, it's not. Jeez, man. I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear him say your name. I apologize.
You're too busy looking at your mustache.
That's right.
The one you'll never have in real life. Anyway, no, I want to point out to Verity Princess. The only way to get rid of ads is to watch it through your web browser, which most people do, because most people don't really watch TV, or Tubi TV through their through TV. Yeah, because you can. His name is Hulu. You can skip all the ads, but no, this movie, and I want to go back. I actually want to disagree with Pixel on this. I guess sorry, not Professor Pixel.
That's right.
Professor Stein? I don't know what we're going to call it. Whatever. No, it's not. I don't blame the assistant as much as I blame the fact that they both were leaving their keys inside the little drawer there. They weren't more discreet about the body. The guy was strapped to the thing. He never would have got it free. Even though, yeah, there was mistakes made on Hans, but Carl, was always there's something was gonna happen. We even find out later, because if you have stress, you talk about the chimpanzee, which had a taste for flesh, cannibalism. It is like its lover apparently. But overall though, I love everything through this. This was much more faster paced than the first movie. The first movie was like, dear God, when are they gonna get to the monster? I don't care about Victor being a child, and I don't care about his background. That could have been like, okay, a backstory. You can plan for that comes with the movie. I don't care if you want to read more about that. This, I like the fact that, like I said, Carl was actually the monster in this. But in reality, though, Carl isn't the monster. It's Victor. It's Victor. Victor cannot help himself. And the dumb thing is that in the very beginning, Victor and Carl come across, the guys robbing they're robbing, digging up Baron, his grave. They find the priest in there. So we learn how he escaped. Pretty much, him and Carl made a deal. They escaped and they had the priest killed, but buried in his place. The problem is though that they didn't change the clothing or any of that stuff. They could have put. So I would have done with that guy. He basically died a heart attack. I would have thrown him in there and got rid of the body of the priest, instead. Because damn well it's a fresh grave. These guys are the the whole thing is that he moved to a new town. Everyone is upset as far as on the medical board. They're pissed off because he's popular with everyone else. Their practice are pretty much dead dry because nobody likes them.
He's better than them.
Yeah,
and they
in
know
every
it.
way. Yes, and like I said, so they're jealous, and the fact that they don't know anything about him, all he knows his last name's Stein. The fact that it took him that long to figure out, oh, he might be Frankenstein. But overall, Margaret, yes, was an annoying character. As soon as she walked in, oh, my father, and Hans should have been like, I'm sorry, but no, this is no place for a woman. Sorry, that's the way it was back then, and they could have got away with it. But I guess they didn't want to deal with her father, I guess, who was like the mayor or whatever, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, they did not go hardcore to hear about revenge in a sense, like, hey, how to deal with these people that keep forcing themselves, upon me while I'm just trying to do my stuff. Because, he's got a very, you think he's under deep cover, and he's not. He's very out there in the public, and obviously that's what gets him kind of caught at the very beginning. So it's an interesting setup. Okay, how are we going to deal with the Frankenstein monster? Right? How are we going to deal with this union that really doesn't want? They're strong-armed, the political part to it. How do we deal with this young woman coming in who's throwing her weight around because of her father? So it's interesting to see him in a situation. So it's hard because in a way I almost want to root for him, but then he's like feeding meat to the chimp, tell him how he became a cannibal with the brain stuff. And I'm like, that's pretty badass. And I got to say this, guys, Peter Cushing, when you watch him and he's talking, he does a good job. And some actors are incapable of doing this. Some are really good being physical actors, like a Steve McQueen, where you just watch their body language and you feel like you know what they're saying. Others are good speakers. But then you get someone like Peter Cushing that will tell you a story while he's walking around doing stuff. And if you watch his fingers, it looks like he knows what he's doing with all the instruments out there too. He handles it like with piano type fingers or guitar fingers. There's a certain elegance and grace to it. And I always pop when I see that. So like when he's feeding meat to the chimp and it's like not a big deal, or he's showing them the brain stuff, that's what makes it cool. Then you realize, wait a minute. He's drawn all this attention to himself because he's doing such a great thing, because in his spare time outside of his normal high-end concierge medicinal practice, he's helping out the poor and downtrodden, which really it's just a front so he can scavenge body parts. I love it. It's hard not to like this guy or have some respect for him, really.
Well, the other thing real cool too I love is Michael Gwen's performance as Carl, because he's basically taking the character Carl from Oscar Quittek, who basically was the hunchback, dwarf, and you see him how he slowly reverts the body, even though it's got a new body, because the brain still the brain is the problem. It wasn't the body ever. It was the brain. And you see how his eyes starts going, the limp, the hunchback towards the end, just like the mannerisms, like these. That to me is more interesting than anything that Victor, is doing on screen. Peter Cushing. I do love Peter Cushing. He's a phenomenal actor. I give him that. But the take on the mannerisms and look just like Carl, new body, end up looking just like the original actor. Even though he's taller, so it was just the performance. We always talk about this when Christopher Reeve played, Clark Kent, and then when he turned into Superman, how he changes his body posture and everything, the way he acted. And I love to see this in movies, especially body switching movies like this. It's like they actually put their effort into this. And I learned that the guy, Michael Gwen, actually served in World War II. A lot of these actors back then, because that was you couldn't, as a worldwide event, you couldn't get out of it. But it's so I'm just trying to think. Though it's like I wonder what got these guys into acting and stuff. Just their careers, because Hollywood back then is different than Hollywood today.
Sure.
Yeah.
And it's the studio system back then too. So once you got in, you could be in.
Do you know what the stand-up character was?
Say again.
Do you know my favorite character out of this whole entire movie though?
You're going to tell us.
Was Richard Wordsworth's character. The guy is like the bum who pushed the broom.
Yep. He had a charisma to him, didn't he? And he's a very the whole underclass thing is interesting, because you go, oh, is he an elitist because he's preying on those that are less fortunate than him? And yet you saw that really great scene with him in there towards the end where Cushing comes in and he had already kind of told what was going on, and everybody just stares at him because they all know he's Frankenstein and what he did with him, and they basically almost kill him. I mean, that's a great scene. It's one of the best scenes in the film to me.
Yeah, but I love it on Hans, who basically he's the other Hans Cleve is the guy basically. He's the pupil working with Victor under him. He's in there and he's having a little coffee, and it looked like he's adding a little bit of brandy or something into it, whatever. And he's like, "Hey, can I have some?" He's like, "Sure." And then he gets called away, and he's like, "Oh, can I have another?" Okay.
Pixel, I wanted to ask you real quick, comparing it to Rosemary's Baby. We talked about in there how one of the themes in Rosemary's Baby is paranoia. Like there's all these people on the outside that are all up in your business, and maybe due to that pressure, you're making decisions that you wouldn't under normal circumstances. What did you think was going to happen in here as far as like his assistant or the whole dynamic of all of that? Because obviously, he's had experience with one from the past movie. I mean, did anything kind of strike you in here? What was going on?
I almost expected what you expected, a betrayal of sorts. I expected him to reveal his true colors, but no. One of the elements that I loved was that they went different with it. This assistant is full on in. He wants to learn. He seeks knowledge. And Victor Frankenstein, he has the kind of knowledge he wants. And so to learn from him, he's willing to do anything. Everything that he's seen, I mean, it seems reasonable. And the more in the last movie, obviously, you kill an old man, you do all this horrible, horrible things. In this movie, while Frankenstein is still a horrible person, yes, nothing he does in this movie is to the level of the previous one. He doesn't kill anybody for this. I mean, he steals limbs from the living. Yeah.
Yeah. Hey, this arm's got to go.
But
I'll just take it.
And I agree with you there on because the fact that he is not really evil, but they weren't allowed to do autopsies back then, really. So they had to steal corpses. So I mean, in a sense, he wasn't doing anything really different than anybody else. The only thing that was more perverse is he was bringing people back to life, and he brought the dog back to life in the first one, so he's a good guy.
So, and there's also the element of, in the previous one, they didn't even address it at all. It wasn't that, oh, we're going to give this man a new body. No, in this one, they recognize, okay, the body is what makes a person a person. We are all basically flesh robots controlled by the little bitty brain that we've all got right in our noggin. So recognizing that, they're realizing if we give this body to Carl's brain, it will be Carl. And with that, I'm just so in love. This was a great week for movies, man. We don't usually have that. There's always something that's like, oh, that's okay. But here, it's fantastic. And I really honestly want to see what's next. Peter Cushing did 6 of these films, missing only one?
Of the Frankenstein. He did more
of the Frankensteins, yes. That's what I mean for the Frankenstein series. And he came back for the last movie. So it's all so exciting. It's great. And like I said, one of the things I loved was that assistant because he is fully devoted to Victor.
I gotta ask, so did anyone else get the impression that maybe when you first see Carl, he sees Hans coming in there, do you think that Carl was gonna get jealous?
Yeah, I was just gonna bring something up with that because the reason why I asked Pixel that was with Rosemary's Baby is in Rosemary's it's straight on paranoia, and this one I'm going, okay, are they just gonna give us the simple thing with the love triangle like they always do, and it works out well, but they put their own little twist on it. So when you see Carl in there, you're going, oh, Carl's gonna fuck him up. Am I right? I mean, Carl's not gonna put up with that stuff. He's
I'm the loyal one. I did everything for him, and you're gonna push me aside for this guy? No.
Until it's revealed that Carl is in this for one reason alone. He wants to be a normal man. And it would have worked if he hadn't gone back to the laboratory to dispose of his old body. If he had just run, he would have been fine.
I don't know. Like you said, he was already starting to show the signs of deformation as it was.
No, it's after he has head damage. He takes a brain injury from the guy beating him up, and that's what makes him look so.
Well, they wouldn't make him go back to being a hunchback, though.
No, but his brain the way it worked, and we again we got the description verbally during the exchange when he accepted the blackmail offer with the eyeball scene and the hand with the flame and the fire.
Yeah.
That's what was going on with Carl and Carl's brain. And to me, I'm looking at it going, okay, they're showing us ahead of time what's going to happen, but now instead
Yep.
of this experiment, it's going to be with Carl. So I was going, okay, is it going to be Carl? Is it going to be a separate monster? Is it going to be, who's going to screw Frankenstein over? Who's he going to have to fuck over to get out of this situation? And it turns out he's just one step ahead of everybody, and I like that. But like I say, the Carl angle, I was surprised because not only was he just there, I'm like, okay, it's the Hunchback. We all know he's going to be a bum. We're like, no, he's the crux of the movie. He's the one that's getting transformed supposedly into something better. And you know what? He's all for it. And like I say, he just wants to have relations with the sweet, sweet lady. We all understand that. So it's a bit tragic. Well, it's true. It's tragic in a way, right? Because one thing we don't see in the first film, in this film, is the obvious, hey, what's going on? By the assistant to the hot chick who, whose needs aren't being met by Victor because he's busy boning the servant. So I thought there'd be an element of something going on, or some sort of betrayal. But it turns out it's not the case, because at the end of the movie, we find out they end up in another city. You're like, hell yeah, they wrote this in mind with the setup for it. And I loved it too. I thought it was tremendous because, again, it's not very scary. And I actually thought it was a very good film. But I liked the first one seemed just a bit more tense to me. And so to me, I preferred that one to this one. And it's been a long time since I've seen the rest of the films. But I know that I wanted to kind of talk about it because we're curious to see what it's like if you go one level deeper in here. And I know I love the Dracula films, so remiss as they can be. They still have an element of awesomeness to them. But these films are just written really good. They're acted well. They've got great set pieces. They got everything you could want in film, and they're still entertaining after first watch. Almost as entertaining as RDV's picture of Carl here, because when I look at that, he's got it in the exact same spot. Bear with me here. I'm connecting all the dots as I speak. All I'm going to say is this, and y'all know exactly the movie, the scene, and the actor, and perhaps the year I'm talking about when I sit there and say, so you're telling me there's a chance?
Yep. It's been or no, you're talking about the other one. No, Dumb Dumber. But no.
What I see is him staring at the StreamYard duck.
well, he's hungry. He wants to eat it. But instead, he chased after that girl, and then you see the 20th century trash can touch the wall, and they're like, "Oh, that's not supposed to be in the film."
I will say, I'll close with this, and then we'll go around for our final thoughts. The funniest, but the worst, weakest scene in the movie to me is when we see Carl out on the loose there, kind of feral, where it's the middle of the night, and you got this dude with this chick. He's trying to woo her, and all he can do is talk about ants like it's some weird creep with the magnifying glass. And she's like, screw this, I'm out of here. I want to get some loving too, and you guys aren't giving me any.
Yeah, she says, full on. Just get on with it.
Yeah,
he was ready and waiting.
Be proper about it, but damn it, give me some.
Yeah.
Why won't these guys slay these women in the film? I mean, I'm not getting a homoerotic
He's
vibe
Ant
from
Boy,
it,
okay?
What?
He's Ant Boy. Let him be Ant Boy. That's what makes him happy.
You can argue it's a very feminist movie that these guys here are kind of, just saying.
I want to bring up the fact that Peter Cushing, Frankenstein, in this film, he doesn't have the servant that he's banging. And in fact, there are these older women throwing their daughters at him, and he's just like, no thanks, I've done this before. Yep. He's done.
Everybody wants me for my money, Yeah, it's hard to think of him as evil. And I'm not saying I'm rooting for him, but he's definitely a strong character, and it has to do with Peter Cushing himself. I mean, fantastic. So much so that when I look back at Star Wars, which longtime listeners of the Xtreme Movie Show understand I'm not the biggest fan of Star Wars films, I look at it and go, well, I don't have a problem with it. He's got an intensity in it, and he's older, obviously, in the mid-late 70s, but he really shines in these Hammer films to me. What was it you wanted to talk about there for your final thoughts there, RDV?
Oh, I was going to talk about crap. You guys kept going on and on and on. I'm trying to think of what it was now. Oh no, that's what it was. Oh, I was surprised because this is 1958, 55, right around there. Or was it 58 or 57? 58, I think it was. Yeah, 58. So you see the eyeballs, you see the hand, you see that, and then later on you see the brain. I'm thinking because remember back then there was actually the film couldn't show certain things like this. And honestly, this is one of those films. The brain, which shows the brain jumping in the jar, was supposed to be cut because they said, according to the Telegraph and the BBC film Foundation, whatever it's called, they said, no, you can't do that. That's too horrific, and stuff. It's because, but because I said so, it was kind of cool to see the brain kind of. But I was thinking like when they had Carl on the thing, and then laying down on the stretcher, and then you saw the other guy, and you see like just like going into the head. I'm thinking, where's the ice cream scooper? Like literally. But I was also trying to think, because remember they stapled the thing back on. Like, how does the skull like naturally bond itself back together, or is just holding on to the staples? I'm thinking like one, like you get hit in the head, that skull cap or your cap is coming off, man. But overall, like I said, I appreciate this movie. This movie went by a little faster than the previous one. And I said Peter Cushing is a brilliant actor. The one problem is he is his own problem. He creates his own flaws. Even at the end, Hans says, "Fleas, like they know you're Stein, they know you're Frankenstein." He's like, "Sure, but they can't prove it." Oh wait, that's right, they can prove it. They can go dig up the shallow grave. Yes. He's
Oops.
yes. He's
That's why
over,
it's kind of
he's over
funny.
arrogance. Yeah. Then they like he's in there. He's like, everyone's you're a murderer. But and then the funny part though is a guy he's in the poorhouse in the little hospital thing. People are throwing bottles. I'm like, dude, the other guy's standing right next to him. You jerks! You hit the other guy. You guys ducking as bottles are flying past his head. That it's like, I was like, this is getting out of control. And then they beat him to death. For almost to death. Hans comes in, helps, and he gets him, and then he's like, Peter Cushing's like, as he wakes up, he's like, what needs to be done, Hans. He's like, okay, I hope I can do this. Wink, wink. He puts his body into a new, the body that's because remember there was a second body, but we never gets. I'm like, what? Carl, I was shocked. I was like, wait, there's another body. What's going on here? Are we gonna have like two Frankensteins? Are they gonna duke it out for who's the best monster?
It's funny because in the credits, well, not the credits of the movie, but on the Wikipedia, listed they have a list for all the movies who's playing Frankenstein and who's playing the creature. And in this movie, Peter Cushing is both listed as Frankenstein and the second creature. With that, it's fantastic, and I think it's actually something that applies to him greatly, because everything that he does, he is arrogant, and his pride does get the best of him, but he learns from that straight away. He gets punished for that. Throughout the entire movie, though, his actual crime against humanity, which is bringing a body back to life, giving Carl a new life, which, when you think about it, where's the real wrong thing here? It's not like he's killed a man like in the last movie. He pays for it because he gets caught and he thinks that he is too big to fail. And after that, he realizes, what needs to be done. And he has a servant that is so devoted and smart enough to switch him to Peter Cushing, the sequel.
It sounds brilliant, but it's so simple, isn't it?
It's so simple and it's so good. I love it.
Yeah, I designed a body to look exactly like the body that's got murdered. As long as I don't go back to Germany, I'm fine. I'll go to London.
Well, listen, when you have an actor like Peter Cushing, you're not going to get rid of him.
About it was how now he had to trust him, because remember, he was getting blackmailed, right? So you almost can argue that this is like a bromance setting up. Okay, how's this going to play out in the next film? And then, the comment about him learning from his mistakes, kind of, sort of, I think is interesting. But I think, honestly, the most interesting comment of all tonight for many of us is one you said, Pixel, about how actually he dials down what he did from the first movie, and that he doesn't actually really kill anybody. And, RDV, you made the pro point about him actually bringing the puppy back to life, because I was like, oh, you fucker, you can't kill a dog or make a zombie dog. But he brings him to life, which is cool. Yeah. Great effects there. So it's tough because he's a man that's about getting shit done. He gets bored easily. I'm guessing he's just got to do what he's got to do, and I understand it. And it's interesting because I didn't really want to take the whole thing about the whole union of medical people, the whole capitalism sort of thing with the rich women trying to throw their young women at him and all that too. He's just a guy. It's like, I just kind of want to do my own thing, guys. Leave me alone. So it's very libertarian in a sort of way. But you definitely could even capture that because there's those kinds of messages definitely in these films as well as a wartime thing too. Yeah, great film, a lot of fun, very enjoyable too. Anything else, guys, before we call it a night that you want to touch up, maybe?
It's none that I can think of, other than he got his revenge and he survived. This guy is like a cockroach; he will not die. So,
I
justice for Carl.
I love how different Venkman and I feel about this because I think it is brilliant that he keeps coming back, and I can't wait to watch The Evil of Frankenstein.
Quit being snooty. I was actually just making a joke. I didn't say that it's horrible. I'm just saying that.
I didn't say it was horrible.
Of course, he gets coming back. Imagine if he didn't. Like, Frankenstein's dead. Oh crap! We can't do another movie.
Wow.
A lot of it back then, they had to wait a while because of the release dates and especially the U.S. market to kind of see what the returns were going to be to do the financing. That's why if you check out anything with that, they're really, again, have that model of we got to churn these things out. We got to get them on time under budget. And you'd be surprised how the public movie-going audience wants to be scared or wants that whole story thing. And horror is just one way to do it. It doesn't have to be blood and guts. It can just be the threat of something, which is usually more effective than showing you all that stuff. And Hammer, like I say, right now, this is early in their not in their history of making films, but with the modern monster movie type of thing. Again, the monster is not Godzilla or a giant ant or something like that. It's human beings, and that's where they were pretty smart about doing it because one, it's a hell of a lot cheaper to do, and two, damn it, those British got a friggin' stranglehold on all that elegant kind of crap too. The laboratory, not the lab. The secretary, not the secretary. I mean, and again, like I said last movie, you can just watch all the stuff going on in the background. You're like, man, I want that blinking, glowing thing over there. Hey, look, there's more leather-bound volumes, even though he's supposed to be in a shithole place. It's very sumptuous. It's very breathtaking, and I'm sure we'll be covering the rest of the Frankenstein films as well as Dracula and some of the others too here. So, man, we had a big show tonight, guys. We had 7-8 people here watching us live here on a short notice. I appreciate that. We're obviously switching over from this going into our fall spectacular, where we take a look at some holiday type films, some older classics too. We got to get a Bogart in there we've been talking about, and of course, RDV and I will be covering some action-based movie. It looks like on Tuesday night, to be determined. So, guys, I want to again say to DVD Daddy, who really retweets us out and gets the word out about us. I really appreciate that, as well as everybody else showing up tonight. It's a lot of fun, especially when you guys are typing stuff. That's why we do this, guys. It's a lot of fun. It's interesting to see, Pixel, you're the Generation C viewpoint. That's interesting. I still can't figure out what you like and don't. We've got a mix in the audience, and RDV and I've been doing the action thing for a while. It's interesting because you're not a big horror buff. So it's pretty freaking cool that we had a chance to sit down and talk about something that, thankfully, like you said, Pixel, it's been a good week for movies. I'd like to thank everybody for showing up. Again, I'm your host, Rob, for RDV, Professor Pixel, and everybody involved with the Xtreme Movie Show. Have a good night, and always remember to stay extreme.
And stay alive.